Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. It's Tuesday morning. We're a little later than normal, but we are here. We got a number of things to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. And might I add, please share this on all your social media platforms. I'm getting messages from people everywhere saying, hey, what happened? I got unsubscribed. Look at my Google Analytics. Tell me this. How do you get 90,000 views and lose 10 subscribers? I didn't gain any new. I actually 90,000 views. So it appears now the more views I get, the less subscribers I get. It's amazing.
Also, I think it's very important that all the viewers sign in when they want to watch, because there's this trick that YouTube is doing right now, that if you're not signed in, it doesn't count into the views numbers.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, you know what? That's probably why all my number of views have gone down. Good one. Thank you very much. Yeah, because here's the thing. They still get the advertising funds because you still watch the advertising. They just don't have to share any of it with the people. Thank you very much. That's a good one. I'll remind people. All right, Laith Marouf. We got lots going on. But first of all, don't forget, look right below Laith's name, freepalestine.video. That's the website for his great works that he's doing. And certainly, guess what? They're not going to go out of business because USAID ain't sending the money anymore. One of the few that'll still be running because they're not getting USAID money. But they need us to help get them going. They're doing really good work, great video work. Go there, make sure you follow them on all their social media outlets. All right, let's roll. Laith, lots to talk about. Here's something I wanted to. There's an article in Le Monde, and the reason I wanted to touch base on it. It's also in Al Mayadeen that Israel facing a major immigration, and I mean with an E, issue, and where people are leaving for good. And we talked about it in the very beginning because wherever you talk about in the world, if you talk about Baltimore, Maryland, or if you talk about Paris, if people don't feel safe in a particular area, then the word stability, if it's not stable, and these are a lot of people from the West, if you're from New Jersey, if you're from wherever, from Moscow, you name it, and now you got bombs going off, craziness in the street, your government, is unstable, you're getting out of there. And it's not that someone else is going to destroy Israel. The Israelis seem to me that they're just going to leave on their own at some point because they don't have a stable place to live. And it's not just attacks from outside. Their government has been unstable. What have they had? 3 different governments in the last several years. The only thing that stopped them from continually changing governments was the conflict. Laith Marouf.
Yes, and the article in Le Monde is saying something like around 600,000 Israelis immigrated permanently to another location. This is probably a undercount, really, of the number, and it also clearly doesn't include people that have left but didn't receive a new citizenship yet, and or those who already have a second citizenship and just left. So the number is closer to 2 million Israelis that have left and are not coming back. And for our viewers, there's around 7 million colonists in Palestine. So that's, over or close to a third of them have already left. And that's a huge blow to the colony. Even before the beginning of this war, the number of Palestinian indigenous people has bounced back from 1948 to become the majority within historical Palestine. So before the war started, there was already over 7 million Palestinians inside historic Palestine and 7 million colonists. And now The number clearly is the majority, with a big margin, is now Palestinians. And this is why I think the Zionists were intent on committing genocide in Palestine and Gaza. And this is why they are right now in a freak out mood, trying to find a way to expel the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank, because they're back to being a minority. And historically, anytime a colonial project doesn't guarantee a numerical majority over the territories trying to colonize, it will fail. And we, of course, doesn't matter how long this colony has been in existence. Look at French Algeria. It was 150 years of occupation by the French, and eventually they had to leave under the weight of the resistance of the Algerian people and the fact that they were not able to change the demographic in a way that they became a majority. Although they killed 6 million Algerians, they still were not able to become the majority in the territory, and they packed up and left. And so now we're in this stage, the end days of the Zionist colony. They are bloody end days, but it's going to happen. It's a lot of people are obviously depressed as what's happening, but the end of Israel is written on the wall.
Yeah, if you look at what was it, over 100 years, the British, controlled India, killed 60 million, 10 times what Hitler did. They killed, at one point, they starved 12 million in one instance, right? And ultimately they had to leave. So, as terrible as these things are, people make great sacrifices, but people will make great sacrifices for their land, and ultimately they win. All right. The other thing I wanted to touch base on here, and that is, something's going on. The empire has lost 2 wars, and there was a discussion: how are they going to deal with that? Are they going to freak out? I mean, they lost 2 wars. People are saying Trump's doing this, Trump's shutting this down, Trump's going to do this. And I just don't believe Donald Trump has that much power. I believe that the ruling elite have looked at what's happening and they've decided to go in another direction. Trump doesn't make these kind of decisions. They'd kill him if he did, right? It seems like the empire lost 2 wars and they're, saying maybe we better tone this down. They're going in another direction. Something's going on with the empire internally. They've run into a brick wall. They've lost. They can't, what I mean? What are your thoughts on this? Everybody's like, Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that, Trump's doing this. And I feel like this: if Trump dropped dead of a heart attack tomorrow, the next guy up would do what he's told by the ruling elite. And Trump can't do anything other than what the ruling elite will let him to do. We saw the last guy that tried to do that was JFK. That's how that works. Your thoughts on all of a sudden, I want to talk to Putin. We need to talk to Xi. Marco Rubio giving this incredible interview where he says, hey, it's a multipolar world now. And look, back during the days of the Cold War, we had disagreements, but we worked them out with diplomacy. We're going in another direction now. Very, very interesting things going. The whole USAID, that's the regime change machine. They seem to be turning down the volume on that. But the truth is, if you're going to shrink into your area, you don't need it. I don't know. What the heck's going on perspective over there, Laith?
Yeah, so the United States not only lost these wars, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and of course they lost in Gaza, they lost in Lebanon, even with all the destruction and the killing, and they lost in Yemen, and they are lost in Ukraine. This is like a huge number of losses. But beyond this military losses that they've had, they've also lost all their soft power, their propaganda power, on the altar of Zionism, in the sands of Gaza that are soaked in blood, in the destruction of the historical sites and the cities of Lebanon. That all destroyed 100 years of credit that the empire had in the minds of the world. And this propaganda was useless. This is partially why the now US aid is being defunded, because the continuing of spending money on this propaganda about the American dream or democracy or human rights or women's rights or children's rights is useless, because the image that we're all watching and the reality that we're all living is in full contradiction to this propaganda. It's not like half contradiction, it's full contradiction. It's not like, let's say, there was all these wars between the Soviet Union and the US that are, proxy wars, and each one of them is trying to sell themselves as the better option for whatever indigenous people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. No, now it was outright one-sided wars between an empire and indigenous people that nobody's backing. And they are fighting the good fight. The Lebanese, the Palestinians did not target children, houses of worship, and civilian infrastructure, while the US and its vassal, the colony, were outright openly saying we're killing children and destroying houses of worship and so forth. So it's about where do you spend your money. So clearly they have made a calculation that the US aid money now and all these soft power initiatives, as well as these coup initiatives that US aid would be involved in, are insignificant in terms of the return that they're getting. So they cut all of that. The other thing that we have to look at just over the last few weeks since Trump came into power is he's now deciding that he can get everything that he was able to get as an empire through US aid and propaganda through outright bullying, just from his pulpit. He doesn't have to even send one soldier out. He doesn't have to spend money on any propaganda. He can just have a press conference and say, Canada, you're going to be the 51st state right now, or you got to drop your money.
Well, how about this? You got to add this. Look, we're going to take it from Russia. Bam, you get punched in the face. I know, doggone it, the Muslim community, we're going to go take it there. Wham, you get punched in the face. You know what he did? Europe, they're going to tax Europe too. Well, hell, we'll just take it from our allies, so-called, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to go over there and take it from these guys. They ain't giving it up easy. They're going to beat me over the head until I'm tired of fighting. Why should I go fight people and lose? I already know I can't beat them. Why not just take it from the guys who are my so-called friends? And now they've said they're going to, all these tariffs on Europe, they're going to take it from their allies. They're going to just suck it from the people around them. It's just as easy. You know, what's funny, though, to look at the Europeans that went along with every war. Oh, we're going to help you bomb Libya and everything. They thought they were on their side. Ooh, we're going to help you do sanctions against Venezuela. They thought they were on the side of the U.S. empire. And when the U.S. empire got clobbered by everybody else, they looked back in Europe and they said, well, we'll just eat you now. I mean, you talk about justice in don't get me wrong. I don't want to see anybody suffer, but you went along with all this crap, and now that monster is turning on you.
You know, I just watched a press conference by Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, my Prime Minister, as long as Canada exists. Maybe very soon Trump will be my president. But he was, listing all the wars that Canada sided with the United States in, starting from Korea. We were with you. We died on the fields of Korea with you. We were there when the world stopped on September 11. He was listing a list of the crimes that Canada was involved in. Okay, and to remind the US that we killed on your behalf and we let our children as Canadian soldiers die for you. Master, I whipped the slaves in the field.
Have mercy on us, please.
Please let me sleep in the kitchen. It's like, it's so humiliating.
Yes.
And they are humiliating themselves. And look, I remember like maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to you here and I said, I don't know how long Panama is going to last or Canada is going to last in comparison to Gaza that lasted 16 months in this war and came out tied. And what we saw in Panama, the guy immediately bent over the minute Rubio landed. He's like, here, you can pass the Panama Canal for free, America. All your military can pass for free. And here is a permanent, forever base on the Gulf of America.
Well, here's the thing. It was easy for the U.S. for this reason. They were already vassals. You know what I mean? I mean, when they went up against Russia, they had to go to Russia's border, and it's never a good idea to fight Russia. Historically tells us they ain't going to go down easy. They went to the Middle East. Well, we know the Muslim community will fight you for 1,000 years. They ain't never going to stop fighting. So it just seems to me they just looked at their vassals. They're already vassals. Here's the truth. They had no respect for them. Even when they were going along with everything they said, they looked at the Muslim world and they said, man, we respect these people. They'll fight. They look at it at the Russians and they're saying, man, these people will fight. We will respect them. Their vassals are the ones they don't respect because they'll do anything they say anytime they want. So why shouldn't they take advantage of them? You know what I mean? What did P.T. Barnum say? It's a crime against God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. That's what they're doing.
Yes. And you look at, to finish off on Panama there, I mean, they had a contract of China running the canal, and this is a long-term contract, and China spent money upgrading and so on. They just ripped it off, they ripped it up and threw it in the, it's amazing. And what's his name? Bukele, the Naib, the president of El Salvador, I believe, has now just offered the United States to take in all the deportees from the US and put them in a mega prison, including American citizens. He's offering to take in American citizens. El Salvador is going to become just a giant concentration camp. Of course, look, the United States, when Trump says he was spending a couple of billion or $200 billion on Canada every year, I think he's telling half of the truth. Part of it is that Canada has barely any military. It's like 65,000 soldiers, including everybody in the offices, not the ones that are on the field. And the U.S. is protecting the north of Canada, the NORAD, all of that. And Canadian market is just 35 million people. It's not like a big plus for American sales of products, but Canada, its majority of its exports are going to the U.S. market with zero taxes on them because of NAFTA. So yes, Canada is the one that's benefiting from the U.S. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna need some money now, and this is what's gonna happen. Canada is gonna bow down as fast as Panama. Similarly, the Europeans are going to bow down now that they destroyed themselves with cutting all their relationship with the East and the South on behalf of the U.S. They're going to have to be shaken down, and they're going to gladly do it. They're going to maybe squirm a little bit in the beginning, but they're going to do it. And it's really funny, to see how all these vassals are reacting. But this is honestly, probably he's going to benefit the United States like no other president in a while before him because of this. One thing I would warn about You remember when, a year ago when all this genocide started in Gaza, I said the Arabic and Muslim communities in the United States, in the West, have to prepare for them, for the worst. And as we see right now, they just passed in the United States a new act to fight anti-Semitism with the right to jail and deport anyone they wish that is found guilty of this supposed crime, which is basically criticizing the Zionist colony. And I think with what the president of El Salvador has just said, that he's willing to take American citizens, I think we're heading towards the possibility of Arabic and Muslim Americans being rounded up and interned and deported, even though that they're citizens. This is a true threat. And I think the Arabic and Muslim communities in the United States should prepare themselves for this outcome.
Yeah, I've said this. Look, the Democrats, when they were in power, the principal thing that they used, they started with Ukraine to, censor and all that, crack down on people. And then, of course, they went to, Zionism, right? The Republicans will get rid of Ukraine and they'll just use Zionism and they'll double. They're all going to censor. They're all going to crack down. They're all going to take our liberties and our rights and stuff like that. They just use different things to do it. So I agree. That's what's going to come. And as I've said before, I do fear, because I believe in justice for all human beings and no innocent people should be hurt, that there's going to be some kind of pushback against innocent Jewish people who either didn't do anything or who even opposed it, that there'll be people angry in the world at Jewish people. They'll blame them for whatever they're mad about. And the same people who claim to be their friends. It's interesting. I always got to say this. The history tells us that the Europeans were the most anti-Semitic, and the Americans. That the they were the part of the world, the Russians, there had been issues in Russia, don't get me wrong. But you look at Asia, you look at the Muslim community and Jewish people live there. Look at Iran right now, right? The history is, there's this irony that the people who were the most anti-Semitic historically, who did pogroms, killed Jewish people, did all these kinds of things, now claim to be protecting Jewish on behalf of Zionism, which is nothing but a tool of imperialism, right? And that at some point, if the history tells us that they, throughout for thousands of years, were the worst anti-Semites, they ain't gone away. And though they're using Zionism now to claim they're fighting that, their roots will return at some point, and they will go back to where because that's who they are. They're the people in the world who did that. To claim that you're protecting Jewish people from Zionism, from anti-Semitism, when you're the ones worldwide who were doing terrible things.
Yeah, look, there's two things that one that prove what you're saying is the number one is that the world is sick of Zionism, and now it's bleeding into sick of being of Jews, period. Okay, and I can say this from this experiment of TikTok and Red Note. When you go right now to Red Note and you see the amount of anti-Zionism that exists within the Chinese population, this is an indication there's not much propaganda, let's say, or education from the Arabic world or the Palestinians that are directed to the Chinese community. There's not much like Arabic initiatives that are in Chinese language, okay? But even without the Arabic or Palestinian community doing work to educate in the Chinese language about the plight of the Palestinian people, it's 100% anti-Zionist, the population of China. And they are, anytime a Zionist pops their head up on Red Note, they get clobbered, okay? So this is the sentiment globally. And at any moment, if the Zionists start playing with their tail, trying to hurt other nations, as they did in the 80s, for instance, in Central America, with all the Contras wars and arming all those Contras, doing all those genocides, and or in Colombia with the drug war and arming all those gangs the Israelis did, that this is going to backfire badly. The other thing that I noticed over the last week, I don't know if our viewers have noticed this, but there's this ultra-Zionist, ultra-fascist group called Bitar, and it's an offshoot of the Likud party and the Kahanist movement that are in the U.S. For the last week, Bitar USA has been posting online, offering money to anyone that drops a pager in the pockets and or inside the homes or in the offices of anyone they deem to be a pro-Palestinian prominent voice. And we saw one of these Bitar activists or paid guys that took the money rush to Norman Finkelstein in the street of New York and drop a pager in his pocket. Now, all of these are death threats referring to the pager terrorist attack. And they are so emboldened right now, given that they got away with committing a genocide in Gaza and are still being protected by the West, that they feel that they can now implement terrorism inside the United States against American citizens, including Jewish anti-Zionist prominent voices like Norman Finkelstein. And so, and the FBI is doing nothing, by the way. The American government is not doing nothing. And this new act that just got passed by a decree of the emperor to combat anti-Semitism is actually accusing anyone that criticizes Israel of being a terrorist. So they are these two things combined: the fact that the whole world is rejecting Zionism and is becoming more and more, against and violently against, at some point, it's going to be Zionism, and the fact that the fortress of America is becoming more and more fascist itself. We see these two things playing out, leading to these actions by Bitar.
Yeah, I think you're right. Syria, what's going on? I know the HTS guy, Jalon, he's running around the world begging for money and things like that. It seems to me that whether it's Turkey or the US, they ain't going to stop stealing that oil and wheat and stuff like that. They're still, they were like, oh, we're occupying that to protect it or something from Assad. Oh, okay, Assad's gone. Oh, okay, we got to protect it from somebody. They ain't going nowhere. They're still looting Syria. And now it seems that Jelani, being the HTS, ISIS, or whatever guy that he is, still wants to get his hands on that money. And the imperial forces are still saying, nah, we kind of like this income. We ain't giving it up. Your thoughts on what's happening with Jelani running around? They got a suit on this guy now, and he's pretending like he's some international statesman, for God's sake. Although I will say this, it was interesting that Tulsi Gabbard called him out for what he was. I was like, ooh, I love that. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, there was...
that was great.
Last week, the foreign affairs minister of this HTS was in Davos in the World Economic Forum. Yeah. And we found out that actually Qatar paid $20 million to the World Economic Forum to give him a seat. So you could see, what kind of, who's really behind them and how much real respect he has, this government. Julani was in Riyadh yesterday and went to Mecca with his wife, which we for first time saw. By the way, a lot of people obviously believe he is not, it's proven that he is not Syrian. And there is very little information about really where he's from. And therefore, now there is the big rumor that he is actually an Israeli spy, just like, Cohen from the 1960s that almost became the Minister of Defense in Syria. So we're
One way or the other, he is.
Yeah.
Formally or informally, it doesn't make it. Let's face it. You know what I mean? Whether he's formally an Israeli spy, if he ain't, he's missing his chance in life, because he's certainly doing their work.
Yes, and so he went and asked for money in Saudi Arabia. He's offering them influence. He already has the money coming from Qatar, and while he's there, I guess that irked the Turks, because it was Qatar and Turkey that were spending their money and weapons on him to take the government. So instead of going back to Damascus, his plane was diverted to Turkey, and he landed in Turkey this morning. And within hours, he came out saying that now they will be offering Turkey bases in the heart of Syria, not on the border, but actually in the center of Syria. There will be a new air base for the Turks, which means Turkey will be able to project its power into Iraq deeper and into Jordan and challenge basically the Saudis and so on. And he didn't, he didn't mention anything about the Israeli occupation of the country in the south. He didn't say anything about the American occupation. And clearly he's not going to dare tell Trump, give me back the oil, because we see how Trump treats his vessels. Trump will probably slap him publicly and say, no, it's our oil forever.
Yeah.
So
all he has to do is take a look at Zelensky and see how things are working out for Zelensky. Not.
Yes. So this is, on the one hand, we can see how the vessels work. On the other, we just had 3 days ago the first announcement coming from the Islamic Resistance in Syria, a new group founded, which attacked Israeli bases in the newly occupied areas in South Syria, and with operations of snipers and missiles. The Israelis didn't announce any injuries or dead, but they usually always hide those things. This is also happening at the same time as there is operations to assassinate commanders of the HTS. We've had at least 4 commanders of HTS groups that have been assassinated in different parts of the country over the last week. And this is combined with the continued ethnic cleansing and of different sects in Syria, the Alawite and the Shia and the Christian sects are being targeted. We saw the shrine of Sayyida Zainab, the granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad, just outside Damascus. The shrine was attacked by HTS gunmen 2 nights ago, and the religious scholars and caretakers of the shrine were lynched. 2 of them were killed. So this is really threatening now not only the Shia sect inside Syria, but threatening Shia and Muslims in general, because Sunnis revere the family of Muhammad and Hassan and Hussein, his grandchildren, and their sister Zainab. So the sectarianism is increasing. We also saw in the last 48 hours 2 very prominent scientists that worked in the scientific military complex of Syria also being killed and their bodies thrown in the streets. So we're starting to see what happened in Iraq in terms of killings of all the scientists and so on after the American occupation, now playing out in Syria. And more people are just specifically from the Alawi or Shia or Christian sect are leaving. And estimates now are over 500,000 Syrians already left since Jolani took control of Damascus.
Wow. I did want to ask you about what's happening, because I know you travel there. I know you do a lot of video there. Southern Lebanon. We're supposed to be moving from the first phase to the second phase. The Israelis were supposed to be leaving. They weren't leaving. I know you went and got a lot of video where, unarmed civilians went and blocked and took their homes back. Just incredible bravery, incredible things going on. What's happening in southern Lebanon? Fill us in. Have you
Yes.
been there? Have you been there recently?
Yes, and I'm going tomorrow also again. The ceasefire was supposed to end on the 27th of January. The Israelis refused to leave. They wanted to extend it, but were rejected by the government of Lebanon. And then by announcement from the Americans, it was extended till the 18th of February. And the civilians refused this. We saw for the last week thousands upon thousands of Lebanese people go back to their villages and push the Israelis out. There was a second wave starting on Sunday, specifically in the villages in the center region of the border between Lebanon and Palestine, thousands gathered around these checkpoints that the Lebanese military has put. And then they marched in. And for the first time, we finally saw the Lebanese military actually move fully in support of the civilians. The soldiers, did kind of columns on the sides of the civilians to protect them from any ordinances or explosives that the Israelis may have put on the sides of the road. We saw the Lebanese army also clearing the mounds of earth before the arrival of the civilians, the mounds of earth that the Israelis put in the middle of the road because, again, of fear that the Israelis may have put bombs in them. And that led to the Israelis retreating from most of those villages over the last 3 days. And today, just hours ago, we saw the Israelis withdraw from the last 2 villages in the central sector of the border, which now means all of the border of Lebanon and the villages on the border are liberated, save for a collection of 4 different villages that are at the triangle between Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon in the shadows of the Golan Heights. And we were expecting that there will be another wave of those demonstrations and unarmed civilians trying to go back to their villages this weekend also to liberate those final villages. And this, I think, the fact that the Lebanese military finally is taking these steps and providing protection to the Lebanese civilians as they return to their villages, this must have really irked the Israelis and the Americans. I think the new president, General Joseph Aoun, who the Americans would like to say that they handpicked him to be the new president. I think now that he's in his position, and it's a position that is safe for 5 years, nobody can take him out of this position except by assassinating him. Now I think he is showing his patriotism, and he's feels protected while doing that. I think the Americans lost control, at least partially, over this new president. And because he had a lot of loyalty within the military to him, he has the ability to actually get the Lebanese military to do its duties. And this is, we will see how the Americans treat him in the next few weeks, because now, as soon as the Israelis are out, there's going to be the need for reconstruction and aid to come to the south of Lebanon. And, we will see if the Americans would punish President Joseph Aoun and somehow block the aid coming to the south of Lebanon.
West Bank, I understand there's been fighting there. There's been various operations from I don't know what they call themselves, resistance forces, whatever, the fighters there. What do you think about what's happening in Lebanon? In the West Bank, what's going on and where that's going?
Yeah, so it seems like the Israelis have decided to move their ethnic cleansing and genocidal campaign to the West Bank since the ceasefire came into effect. And now it's been, I think, 20 days of nonstop attack on Jenin and its refugee camp, Tulkarem and its refugee camp, Nablus. And these are the three main cities in the north of the West Bank. We saw over the last few days a total destruction of full neighborhoods in Jenin and Jenin refugee camp. There's, they set up all these charges and blew up almost 30 buildings at the same time, the Israelis. So there is mass exodus coming from these three cities. Something like around 150,000 civilians, Palestinians left from those three cities are right now internally displaced. And all the infrastructure, the public squares, the roads are being destroyed in this campaign. And at the same time, this is happening with the full collaboration of the Palestinian Authority or non-authority and its security forces of Mahmoud Abbas. We saw the PA security forces engage in firefights with the resistance forces in those three cities. And at the same time, we saw the resistance putting ambushes for the PA security forces. And this is leading to two things. One is the public mutinies within the PA security forces. We saw multiple officers do like public videos, taking off their fatigues and saying that they're joining the resistance in Jenin or Tulkarem. This is, threatening the whole PA itself. There was a huge demonstration in Ramallah over the weekend, which is basically the green zone that is protected for Mahmoud Abbas, a huge demonstration out of the ordinary. And this demonstration went to the headquarters of the security forces and surrounded them. And the security forces were unable to really control the situation. And if it wasn't for the fact that the demonstrators didn't have the intent to take over the building or burn it down or whatever, it would have happened. But the demonstrators were, reasonable and just wanted to show their dismay with how the Palestinian security forces are acting. But these are all kind of indicators of what's to come. If the PA security forces continue to outright collaborate in the destruction of Palestinian cities and the killing of Palestinian youth, then we should expect that at any moment a military action will be taken by the resistance against them. And Mahmoud Abbas is, by the way, he's like Biden. He's a vegetable. He's like a man in his late 80s. He's not really the one ruling the PA.
Let me ask you this. I've seen stuff on, this is the other thing, and I think it has to be humiliating for the Israeli forces, etc. I've seen these pictures online of Gaza, where the people returning, fighters everywhere, brand new, cleaning, shiny new uniforms and equipment, look like they never even got touched. Don't get me wrong, there was a war and certainly they lost the people and they fought and they did what they were going to do. And I've read about the, angry Israelis saying, what in the world? We were told that 80% of them were, and look at them, they're running around everywhere. They're celebrating, they're, holding up flags and the victory and all this kinds of stuff. Anyway, your thoughts. I don't know what to make of it all. I know the Israelis are not happy. They're really realizing they were lied to by the government, which means more instability. But it seems as though, to be quite frank, the resistance was more successful and resilient. We kept hearing, the Hezbollah has been wiped out by a bunch of pagers blowing up. The resistance has been, they're not that worn down to a nub. It seems like they were a lot tougher and a lot more successful than even any of us had suspected.
Oh yes. Look, the Hamas announced just 3-4 days ago that Mohammed al-Daif, the head of the military wing of Hamas, was among the martyrs, that they haven't announced it during the war. They were waiting to confirmation. And Mohammed al-Daif is called the Ghost. The Israelis attempted to kill him many times, but never had a picture of him. He was deformed because of attacks that happened against him. He lost his children in different attacks over the years that the Israelis targeted his home. And we saw all the resistance movement in the world, whether they're Shia or Sunni, all of them mourning this man. He's going to be remembered as one of the most brilliant military strategists of the 21st century. He was the designer of the October 7th actions. And just as this happened, earlier today, there was a very similar action happening in the West Bank. A Palestinian fighter managed to infiltrate an Israeli base in the West Bank, take it over by himself, and kill 4 Israeli soldiers, injure many more, and the Israelis had to bomb their own base to try to get him. So this shows you how the difference between the value of a Palestinian warrior versus a Israeli soldier, right? The Israeli soldier wants to have TikTok videos dancing, wants to go into a Palestinian home or a Lebanese home and put on the lingerie of the women in the house, while the Palestinian fighter will dig under the ground with a spoon and come from under a tank and blow it up, and or take a base or fly with a glider from, homemade glider to land inside a base and take out a whole battalion by themselves. This is the value of the Palestinian fighter versus a Zionist fighter. And yes, the images of the full control that Hamas has of the ground in Gaza after the ceasefire came into effect must have shaken the Israelis, because those images were not just the spanking clean clothes and brand new cars that nobody knows how they got into Gaza, right? If you can get brand new cars, 2025 models, into Gaza right now, it means the supply of weapons never stopped. Okay. Beyond that, we saw a complete, control of the situation, whether it's the media strategy, whether it's the police and firefighters and so on, all being distributed in the land of Gaza in minutes when the ceasefire came into effect. That shows that the whole infrastructure of governing the territory by Hamas is intact. In comparison, we look at the Israelis. They haven't returned to any of their colonies around Gaza and or the border with Lebanon. They're leaving, as we said earlier in the show, immigrating to the West, the ones that don't have second citizenship. And the children of their leaders are all already, anyways, in Florida and other places. They're not willing to fight, or sacrifice any part of their families for the defense of this colony. So Israeli morale is zero now. And the only thing that Netanyahu can give as a morale booster to the colonists is his visit to Washington, D.C., being the first foreign leader to visit Trump, and whatever goodies he's going to give them. That's the only thing that he can boost morale with.
Yeah, things are, as I said earlier, they lost. Before we go, your thought, well, The Chinese, they released an AI video. Basically, they nuked the US's, AI, whole entire AI plan. The US, oh, we're going to spend hundreds of billions in it. We're going to rule the world with it. We're going to put tariffs and all kinds of things on China so they can't get certain chips and the things they need for AI. And for like $5 or $6 billion, they built something that's equal to what the U.S. is doing for hundreds of billions. They basically nuked the AI, USA, $1 trillion, NVIDIA, and lost basically $1 trillion in like one day. And so there's multiple kinds of defeats. We've discussed the defeat in the Middle East, and that's an economic and technological defeat, the technological defeat of unprecedented level. Let me get your thoughts on the Ukraine conflict and the results of that. I'm wondering what you're thinking of the results of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Russians defeated the might of NATO as in technological military race and fight. It's the
and economic,
yes,
because they sanctioned with everything they had.
Yes, and the Palestinians, the Yemenis, the Lebanese defeated the Western imperial machine with very little technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? With just the spirit, the spirit of the Lord. And the Chinese right now are technologically leaping. Advancing in leaps, above the United States with all these sanctions on chips and what have you. I mean, NVIDIA lost 1 trillion because of DeepSeek, but overall, the information technology companies in the U.S. In the West lost 3 trillion in that same day. So it's a huge number. Remember, they were trying to shake down everybody to pay up 500 billion for this new AI haven that Musk wanted to build. And what we see right now is that not only did China, outpace them and create this better AI, they made it open source and they made it free for use, which means they killed the market.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have an equivalent to DeepSeek, you can't make money because everybody's going to go and use the free option, except if they're a big company and they want to add some things and then they pay, but also still a very small margin of what they would have paid for ChatGPT or others. The other crazy thing about this AI is right now the American AI companies are, because DeepSeek is open source, the American AI companies are just looting the whole code and putting it online with just change of name. and somebody was doing a test on one of these American AIs, and because the engineers that stole the open source code of DeepSeek made a mistake and didn't switch on the English option, the only answers were coming out in Chinese. In Mandarin. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And I think if China continues on this path of advancing technologically, but also keeping it open source, it will help all of humanity. Look, right now, countries like Iran took also the DeepSeek open source code and are creating a new Iranian in Persian language, AI. Brazil can do it, South Africa can do it, and then all you have to do to catch up to China is learn the next trick by yourself or add another component. So it's going to be a level field. And because AI is going to be integrated in so much parts of our life, this is going to save humanity. Imagine if Africa and Latin America and Asia 5 years from now have to buy these very expensive medical robots that do surgery, right, with AI. But now, because it's only American AI, you're paying billions of dollars. How many lives will be lost? Okay. Now it's things are going to level, and the West is freaking out because the new frontier for colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, exploitation was going to be this, information frontier, the AI frontier, and China just pulled the rug from under the West, and they now have no. This is part of why I think Trump is accelerating his shakedown, right? Because he thought that maybe at least if we go with this AI, we're going to be the dominant power on it, and everybody's going to pay me. But now he's gone. There's no business for the next 15 years. There's no business scheme that the U.S. is the number one, company in. Okay, Chinese companies right now are number one on everything, including, electric cars, and and
you know what else? They have to be worried, because right now, if I'm U.S. tech companies and I'm saying, okay, we're going to come up with this and we're going to make money off it, I already know that before I can get it done, the Chinese are going to be giving it away for free or at a much cheap. You know what I mean? So here's the truth: if you're the Western tech companies, your only hope is to work with the Chinese companies in a peaceful manner and say, we'll work together with you. There's no more competition against them. You're going to lose that. Also, I'm reading this. So Trump said, in what you would expect, an imperial shakedown. Hey, all of these countries in Europe, you're now going to have to pay us 5%, or we can't be there. Well, one after another country today, they came out and they said, but 5% of our GDP is damn near half of our entire budget. We can't do it. That kind of means the end of NATO too, doesn't it? I mean, NATO, but let me add this. If the whole thing about NATO is, quote, standing up to Russia, but really they want to take Russia over, and you now realize that you can't beat Russia, realistically, there's no need for NATO anymore, other than simply as a shakedown to Europe to sell them weapons that aren't going to do them any good anyway. So NATO is now a futile endeavor. It's been demonstrated that it's all a fraud. And the people in Europe are broke and they can't afford it.
Yes, and they are. You could see already the internal squabbling also starting in this, hastily put together union called Europe, with all these different peoples with different nationalities, cultures, and languages, and so now they're picking at each other because somebody has to pay for what master wants, and Germany and France are running out of money. They were basically keeping the whole European economy afloat and funding every projects in there. And because what we saw with the destruction of the pipelines and the destruction of German economy in general, they're not able to afford anymore to subsidize the Eastern European countries and South European countries that are part of the Union. So I think we're going to see not only the breakdown of NATO, but we may see the breakdown of the EU.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Yeah, and I think at some point that the NATO countries maybe already are starting to realize that they went along with the U.S. empire so that they could, the old saying, you shake the tree, I'll rake the leaves, right? So the U.S. empire could go around and they could steal, and they could, kind of like when what it was like to me, the U.S. vassalage, when the lion kills the antelope and the lions eat their fill, and after that the hyenas come in, and after that the birds come in, right? That's all they were doing. The U.S. would shake down a country, overthrow a country, do whatever dirty work they were doing in Africa, and afterwards the vassals would come in and they'd steal a little bit, and then the little smaller ones would come in, and now there's no more antelope. There's nothing left for them to eat, and they're trying to figure out how to survive themselves. And I think
the lion is turning on the hyenas.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's going to eat them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think they've come to the realization that their power sharing deal with the U.S. was a Faustian deal all along. That they made a deal with the devil, and now the devil's coming for their soul.
Yes, yes, and you know, the rest of humanity is laughing, and I think the future is very bleak for anyone in Europe or Canada or so on. Look at the prices of things in Canada. I mean, I have money in the bank in Canada, and before the shakedown began by Trump, the Canadian dollar was equal to 75 cents, roughly
Mhm.
American. Well, it's now down to 60 cents. It's very soon going to be 50 cents. And so we're losing the value of everything, right? I have a house in Montreal. It's just right now, both lost 20% of its value. So it's the whole country is going to be living this. The purchasing power of the Canadian dollar is going down. So even prices of anything that they're importing from not from the United States is going to be going up on the consumer in Canada. Canada barely grows anything because of the weather. So everything has to be imported, and including much of the vegetables from the U.S. I don't know why Trump was lying about this, but the fact is that Canada really buys a lot of agricultural products from the U.S. But now this is going to be unaffordable to them, and so where are the Canadians going to buy their products from, especially food? I mean, they're going to be back to having what is it, scabies? That when you don't have vitamin C,
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly right.
right? Florida oranges. They can't afford Tropicana anymore.
Scurvy, I think, wasn't
Oranges,
it? Yeah, scurvy, I think, is what the British
scurvy,
used to
right?
get. Yeah, that's why they called them the limeys, because they carried limes on their ship to stop them getting scurvies from
Yes,
vitamin C
yes.
deficiency.
So now this is going to be a reality in Canada. Back to that age where there's no vitamin C because you can't afford. Remember in the old days when on Christmas in these cold countries, the best gift you can give somebody was an orange,
Yep.
right? It's going to be back to that again. It's like,
Yeah. Well, the empire, it's like the human body, if you're out there and you're in the cold and your body wants to survive, it first cuts off blood flow and things to the extremities because it wants to keep your important organs, right? And it goes bit by bit. And as an empire starts to dissolve, the furthest reaches of the empire, the weakest reaches of the empire, it eats them and your body will eat itself. You know what I mean? It starts digesting the protein of its own body. And so as this thing is shutting down, it's just digesting and taking in and destroying and eating and shutting down everything in the furthest reaches of the empire. They're going to get out of Korea. I believe this. They're going to get off the Korean peninsula. They're going to be shutting down bases. The Russians are like, we want you to shut down bases on our border. They're going to be shutting down bases all over the world. They're just trying to survive. Believe it or not, one last thing I'll say, and I'll get your comment on it. One of the things I think that scared the bejesus out of the ruling elite was the Luigi thing. I think when they saw this guy get plugged, I'm not for violence against anyone. There's nothing I can do. It happens. Some guy walks up to the member of the ruling elite and shoots him in the back. And they all look. And the people were, I'll say in the streets, but online, cheering, yay, we love him. Good job. I think that's one of the things that scared the empire because the ruling elite looked at that and said, holy crap, they're going to kill us next. I
oh yes.
believe that was a turning point for them. A lot of these things that are happening right now, they came to the conclusion. They're not stupid. People think they're stupid. They're not stupid. I think they came to the conclusion they will kill us all. And they were right if we
You
keep going
remember
in this
in the
direction.
beginning after the murder by Luigi, the media in the United States were trying to parade the guy, and they created all these moments for camera where they're
Yeah.
marching him with all these armed officers or whatever it is, and they were trying to demoralize the population and make
Right.
them look at what we'll do to you if you this is yeah. But that backfired so badly that those images became iconic for the masses of the US, of dignity of somebody that just took down a CEO, and the whole might of the police have to humiliate him in these public stances, that suddenly all the story of Luigi died out from the media. We haven't heard one update about his court case. Nothing. Okay, so they decided, well, it didn't work out that we're going to make an example of him in public media. Let's kill it. Let's kill it completely. Let's hope that they forget that happened.
Yeah, and I'll say this: they can have a court case, because if they give this guy a jury of his peers, they will not find 12 people that is going to, that would, the ultimate humiliation for them would be, and there's a humiliation with them knowing right now, they tried to say, oh, terrorism, but they can't come down too hard on him and say he's a terrorist and just, whatever, because the people will be enraged. He is, they don't want to make a martyr out of him, but they can't have a trial, because if they have a trial, he may very well, probably a good chance that he'll walk. And at that point, the message will be out there to people who are furious, to some other guy that gets screwed over by a big corporation or what have you, that says, well, hell, I can just go shoot him. Nobody's going in this country will convict me. That's why I'm saying they're not stupid. I think they understand that.
Oh yes, and their options are being narrowed down. They don't have much options. People hate the Western elite everywhere on this planet, inside their country, their neighbors like Canada. I mean, I've never seen the Canadian public calling for a boycott of American goods. I mean, who thought of that day would ever come? Right? I mean, the Prime Minister of Canada calling on people to buy Canadian. This same asshole, Trudeau, that basically was going to criminalize boycott against the Zionist colony, and were refusing to take off the shelves Israeli products. Now, all these big companies shopping, like supermarkets and the government-controlled liquor agencies, because in most of Canada, liquor stores are owned by the government, they are de-shelving American alcohol. So this is like state-operated boycott, okay? Unheard of. And so that shows you the desperation of, number one, the Canadian elite that are freaking out, and also the desperation of the US elite to get to this point where your biggest neighbor, your most loyal dog, okay, that you start whipping your most loyal dog in the middle of a fight, a global war that you're trying to fight with China, Russia, and the Arabs and Muslims and so forth. This is not all of these are moves of desperation.
Yeah, I think you're right. And now, more and more people are waking up to this party loyalty in the U.S. I'll end by saying this, because I've been using this this analogy, this historical citation by Frederick Douglass, because people are like, I know a lot of people who are like, call themselves, I'm a Democrat and blah, blah, blah. And the Republicans are doing that. And I always use the old Frederick Douglass line. He said, when I was a child, he says, I saw something I'll never forget. He says, I was in town and I saw two slaves who got in a fight over whose master had the biggest house. Whose master was the richest. And that's when I say to them, you're arguing over these two parties. There's nothing, they're not doing anything for you. The Democrat, what do you think they care about you? You're fighting over whose master has the biggest house and whose master is the richest. That's a fight you don't want to have. So, but thank you very much. Don't forget, everybody, freepalestine.video. Where can everybody, that's right, freepalestine.video. If they go there, they can also find links to all your social media, and everything you're doing. Your YouTube show is back up, isn't it?
Oh yes, and it's in full force. Actually, we're getting a lot of good intake, especially that we've been covering all the releases of the Palestinian prisoners and all the coverage from the south of Lebanon. People can donate, of course. This is the only way we can afford producing all this content. We produced from the West Bank in January 240 reports.
Wow.
So that's, an average of 8 reports a day, interviewed practically every released prisoner that was released into the West Bank. So if you want to watch their stories, know more about these prisoners and what they suffered, Free Palestine TV is the only place on the internet that can give you that opportunity.
FreePalestine.video. Share that on all your social media platforms. And don't forget, it's very important. Don't forget what Laith said, and that is they're not getting you. They ain't shutting down because they ain't getting USAID money, but they can only continue their work if you donate. If you also make sure that you share FreePalestine.video on all your social media platforms. And while you're on there, when you share it, make sure you put a little note on a post for people to recommend it, those who can afford it, that they donate. Also share this particular video on all your social media platforms. Do the best you can. Something else that Laith brought up: when you're watching this video, or when you're watching any of the online stuff, FreePalestine.video, when you're watching or any of this stuff on YouTube, make sure you sign in. Apparently now YouTube's playing games. I mean, if you looked at my analytics, for God's sake, look, literally last week I had 89,000 views over like a 5 or 6 day period. I lost 10 subscribers. 90,000 views, and the number of subscribers went down. I used to get, if I would get 50,000 views and I, have a couple thousand subscribers, 90,000 views, lose subscribers. So the games that they're playing. It's Google and YouTube is the equivalent of USAID online. That's what it's the imperial machine to attack and propagandize and all of that kind of stuff. So please sign in when you watch these things so that they can actually count as views. Thanks a lot, Laith, and I will talk to you soon. All right, everybody, have a great day. Oh, by the way, I'm going to have today at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have the good and reverend Ray McGovern on. I love Ray McGovern. He's good people, and he does a lot of good work for peace. So thank you.
I'll be watching.
All right, thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.